Authorities are investigating the fatal shooting of a 25-year-old woman in a vehicle over the weekend. At 6:56 a.m. on the 18th of February, Oswego police in Illinois identified the woman as 25-year-old Anissa Allen Williams. Officers were told that Anissa shot herself while driving on the highway. A passenger is said to have taken over the vehicle and drove it to the 100 block of Presidential Boulevard, where they both lived, and called police. When police arrived at the residence, they found Anissa unresponsive on the ground outside the driver's side of the vehicle with a gunshot wound. Officers provided medical assistance until paramedics arrived, but she was pronounced dead at the scene. Police were unable to determine the location where the gunshot had occurred. During the investigation into Anissa's death, the passenger of the car, 26-year-old Alexia Tellers, battered 2 police officers. She was arrested and charged with 2 counts of aggravated battery against a peace officer. She is held at the Kendall County Jail in Yorkville pending a bond hearing. Oswego police are asking anyone with information on the incident to contact Crime Stoppers. 2 Portsmouth Ohio parents are behind bars and are accused of abusing twin infants. 20-year-old Cody Alexander Ronald Allen and 27-year-old Sterling Carter are charged with 2 counts of felonious assault and 4 counts of endangering children. On Monday the 20th of February, a social worker from the Nationwide Children's Hospital contacted police about a possible case of abuse after 5-week-old twins were admitted to the hospital's trauma unit after being transferred from Southern Ohio Medical Center. The infants had eye hemorrhages, multiple broken bones in their legs and arms, multiple rib fractures, abrasions to the face including a black eye and bruising. Cody and Sue Ellen were arrested and are both being held at the Scioto County Jail on a $340,000 bond. 2 males and a female were arrested in Madison County, North Carolina over the weekend after allegedly kidnapping and torturing an unidentified person. On the 19th of February, the victim escaped after being tortured and was taken to a hospital for treatment after showing up at a resident's house, saying they had been kidnapped. Madison County Sheriff's Office deputies followed the lead back to a nearby house in East Fork and determined that Patrick Banks, James Angel, and Nicole Sawyer had forcibly trapped the victim in the basement. According to Sheriff Buddy Harwood, the victim's hands, feet and chest were all tied with barbed wire, and the mouth had been taped shut. The chest was reportedly tied to a beam of the residence. The victim had also been reportedly punched and kicked in the head, hit in the head with firearms and a crowbar, and sliced by multiple knives, causing numerous lacerations to the victim's face and hands, and had crosses carved into their face and body. The 3 suspects were taken into custody and charged with assault with a deadly weapon, inflicting serious bodily injury with intent to kill, kidnapping, and possession of a weapon of mass destruction. Patrick was additionally charged with possession of a firearm by a convicted felon. On Tuesday the 21st of February, 28-year-old Nakira Grine of Bridgeton, New Jersey, was sentenced to life in prison without parole after she was convicted of killing a toddler son, then dismembering and burning his body in 2019. Nakira was found guilty of murder, desecration of human remains, endangering the welfare of a child, tampering with evidence, and false public alarm. At 6:36 p.m. on the 8th of February 2019, Nakira told police that a 23-month-old son, Daniel Griner Jr., had been abducted, so multiple law enforcement agencies launched a search for the toddler. At 3 a.m. that same night, her child's dismembered and burnt remains were found in a purse and trash bags, buried beneath the shed of the family's home at 21 Woodland Drive, and Nakira was taken into custody. Nakira told investigators that she hit her son because he would not eat or listen to her. She admitted to striking her child so hard that it left bruises on his face. After striking the child, she said that she didn't call for help, but placed her son in a stroller and left him alone. She said that her son also fell down the stairs, but she didn't seek help. When detectives confronted Nakira about the abduction report, she told them that she was pushing a toddler in a stroller and had her infant strapped to her chest while she was walking to a deli. She said that a stranger went after her and knocked her to the ground and repeatedly kicked her in the head and right side. She said that when she looked up, the stroller and Daniel were gone. Officers soon found the stroller a few blocks away, containing only a pair of red sneakers. During subsequent interviews with police, her story began to change. After her son's remains were discovered, an autopsy revealed that the child had been beaten to death. The toddler's skull had been broken into 74 pieces, and that the child's body had been burnt in an oven. Nakira admitted to burning and dismembering her son's body, but denied intentionally killing him. Her attorney said that the killing was accidental and as a result of postpartum psychosis. Prosecutors said that Nakira made phone calls from jail, which recorded her saying that she did what she did to Daniel to cover up the bruises on his body. A woman was indicted on an arson charge about a month after she allegedly intentionally set fire to a Springbrook apartment complex in Springville, New York, causing large-scale damage. On the 22nd of February, 36-year-old Sarah Lilly was arraigned on one count of second-degree arson. At around 10:30 p.m. on the 23rd of January, Erie County deputies responded to the apartment building at 109 North Buffalo Street about a fire. Multiple volunteer fire companies responded to the scene to put out the blaze. Authorities said that some structural parts of the building and many units suffered extensive damage where some were destroyed. Investigators said that no one was injured in the fire, but several residents were displaced. After speaking with witnesses and gathering evidence, detectives arrested Sarah the following day on suspicion of arson. If Sarah is convicted, she faces up to 25 years in prison. According to the authorities, Sarah also has a criminal case in court regarding a burglary offence. At 5:57 p.m. on the 20th of October, Sarah allegedly knowingly entered and remained unlawfully inside a store on the 300 block of South Cascade Drive in Springville with the intent to commit a crime. She's accused of stealing $38.04 in merchandise. Sarah was reportedly banned from the store due to a previous shoplifting incident that occurred in February of 2022. Sarah's been held at the Erie County Jail without bond. A commenter named Ash Marie posted on the Erie County Sheriff's Office Facebook page about Sarah. She said, "I know she used to work at a local bar, and I know at some point in the last few years she lost custody of her daughters. I know she started using meth and started working outside the bar. She's been in my work multiple times, stealing along with other businesses around town. She threatens people, harasses people. I don't know. I think she's hurt, damaged, more trauma than anyone probably knows, bottling it up and coping in all the wrong ways. But there's a good person somewhere in there. She hasn't been this way forever. She has to find the want and willpower to be better, to do better. Hopefully she'll accept help while in prison and not just find drugs in prison. Only time will tell," she wrote. 3 18-year-old men are behind bars for the death of 15-year-old Madison guest wine. The incident occurred in Madison's bedroom at an apartment complex in the 500 block of Peachtree Station Circle in Peachtree City, Georgia. At around 6 a.m. on Tuesday the 21st of February, Madison's mother discovered her daughter's unresponsive body laying on a bed with a gunshot wound to her head and immediately contacted 911. She told the dispatcher that her daughter was bleeding from the head. She said that when she entered her daughter's bedroom, the window was open and the blinds were a mess. She told the dispatcher that she can't get any response from her and that there's a lot of blood on the bed. She also said that her son's asleep in his room. The dispatcher instructed the mother how to administer CPR until medics arrived, but she was unable to be revived and was declared dead at the scene. The next day, police arrested 3 18-year-old suspects who were described as acquaintances of Madison. Justice Smith, Jacobian Brown and Yeshua Mathis, all of Fayetteville, Georgia, were each charged with murder. Authorities said that a final cause of death is pending determination by the medical examiner, but an injury to Madison's head appears to be consistent with a gunshot wound. A motive behind the attack has not yet been determined. Peachtree City Police Chief Matt Myers said, "This was not a random attack. They knew whose apartment they were at, and it was in some way related to matters between these individuals. The investigation into the matter continues." A 38-year-old man is behind bars for allegedly killing his stepfather. At 7:42 p.m. on Sunday the 19th of February, deputies were called to the 4000 block of Madison Lane in Augusta, Georgia in reference to a mental evaluation. When deputies arrived at the property, they were met with Marcus Banks. Marcus told deputies there was a dead body in the home and he wanted it gone. Deputies detained Marcus while they searched the house. While searching the residence, they found 79-year-old Clarence Flanagan's unresponsive body in the back bedroom with multiple stab wounds to his upper torso. The coroner pronounced Clarence dead at 8:56 p.m. Investigators said that Clarence was an emergency medical specialist and Marcus, who was schizophrenic and homeless, turned up to his home unannounced. Marcus confronted the victim, beat him and stabbed him repeatedly in the chest with a black-handled knife with a 5-inch blade while inside the house. The victim had received threats from Marcus before, but nothing that turned physical. Marcus is held at the Charles B. Webster Detention Center and is charged with murder and weapon possession charges. Marcus has a lengthy criminal history dating back to 2006, including 4 criminal trespass charges and 3 obstruction of law enforcement charges, one of those a felony back in 2021. Other offences include robbery, shoplifting, simple battery and simple assault charges. Since April of 2022, the Sheriff's Office has been to Clarence's home 6 times, 2 for a follow-up, a disturbance call, trespassing, domestic violence and a welfare check in October. The investigation into the matter continues. Police are investigating the fatal shooting of a man in Cleveland, Ohio on Tuesday afternoon. At around 1:15 p.m. on the 21st of February, a postal worker heard gunfire and found an unresponsive man with multiple gunshot wounds to his head and body lying on the ground of a driveway at 1433 East 81st Street. Authorities were contacted and responded to the scene, where the victim, later identified as 25-year-old Terry Chandler, was pronounced dead at the scene. Residents nearby reported seeing an SUV fleeing the area. However, they are uncertain of the colour. No arrests have been made to date, and the investigation remains ongoing. Anyone with information regarding this incident is urged to contact Crime Stoppers. A Florida couple have been arrested for the sexual abuse of 2 young girls. Stephen Cribb and Laura Dietz, both 29, of Mentmore Circle in Deltona, were arrested on the evening of Wednesday the 22nd of February, following a swift investigation by the Volusia County Sheriff's Office that began earlier that morning. While questioned, Stephen and Laura allegedly admitted to sexually abusing 2 young girls under the age of 12. The abuse occurred multiple times over the course of several years. The defendants are known to the victims, but the nature of their relationship is being withheld to protect the victims' identities. Stephen and Laura are being held at the Volusia County Branch Jail and are each charged with 2 counts of sexual battery of a child under 12. There's no indication of any other victims in the case. 29-year-old Sterling Trevin smiled during his arraignment on Tuesday on murder and assault charges after a man and woman died, while 2 men suffered critical injuries in a quadruple stabbing. The incident occurred at 8:45 p.m. on the 19th of February at a recovery home for drug and alcohol addicts located at 9375 Central Valley Road Northeast in Bremerton, Washington. Authorities were alerted to the property when 911 callers said multiple people had been stabbed and the assailant was still inside the residence. One of the occupants of the house who called 911 said he was barricaded in his room disconnected the call, saying he was jumping out the window. Another resident who called 911 crawled out of his bedroom window and onto the roof of the house. Within 4 minutes of the calls, deputies from the Kitsap County and a state trooper arrived outside the property. As they approached their home on foot, they heard a noise nearby and found Sterling splattered with blood crawling away in the brush, clutching a bloody butcher knife. He was apprehended without incident. Additional deputies made entry into the home and found 2 bodies and 2 severely injured men. The 2 victims who died from their stab wounds have been identified as 51-year-old William Faust and 59-year-old Retha Price. Of the surviving victims, one was taken to Tacoma General Hospital with multiple stab wounds to his head and neck, and he was intubated in the intensive care unit at the hospital. The other man was flown to Harborview Medical Center in Seattle with multiple stab wounds to his abdomen and head, and had to have a finger amputated. A man identified Sterling as the person who had stabbed him. The man said that he and a woman who had come to visit him at the house heard a commotion coming from a room that Sterling shared with one of the murder victims. He heard the victim calling for help and found Sterling stabbing the man. The woman went to help the man and stop the bleeding with a sweatshirt, and Sterling began to stab her and others, the man said. One witness said that 9 people lived at the house and believed there may have been a couple of guests at the residence at the time of the attacks. After hearing the commotion, the man exited the room and saw Sterling bloodied and holding a butcher knife. That man, one of the 911 callers, shut himself inside a room as Sterling unsuccessfully attempted to get inside before escaping out a window to a vehicle. Sterling admitted to using meth that day, and he grabbed a knife from the kitchen and attacked people because he believed they were surveilling and recording him without his consent. Sterling was transported to the St. Michael's Medical Center for treatment of minor injuries before he was booked into the Kitsap County Jail on 2 counts of murder in the first degree and 2 counts of assault with a deadly weapon in the first degree. In court on Tuesday, Sterling pleaded not guilty to all the charges. Judge Adams approved the state's request for a $4 million bail, on finding that bail is appropriate due to the risk of failure to appear and substantial risk of violence in the community, she said. Sterling's grin was wiped off his face as he exited the courtroom. His trial was set for April. Sterling has an extensive criminal history, including 3 prior felonies. An Iowa man and his girlfriend are behind bars and are accused of failing to provide proper care for the man's father, causing him to die in deplorable conditions. 24-year-old Jacob Shaper and 23-year-old Jocelyn Grisham were arrested on the morning of the 21st of February and are each charged with second-degree murder in the death of 58-year-old Stephen Shaper. At 1:06 a.m. on the 10th of August, authorities responded to an emergency call at a residence located at 228 First Street in West Des Moines. The caller reported that a man was experiencing a medical emergency. Upon arriving at the scene, first responders located Stephen, who was suffering from multiple medical issues and living in deplorable conditions. Medics transported him to the local hospital, where he was later pronounced dead. An immediate investigation was launched into the circumstances surrounding Stephen's death due to his medical ailments and the poor living conditions witnessed in the residence. Detectives obtained evidence indicating that Stephen's caretakers, Jacob and Jocelyn, intentionally or recklessly denied him adequate medical care and living conditions, which resulted in his death. Stephen needed constant care and was unable to leave the bed, get food or bathe himself. First responders said that when they found Stephen, he was laying in a feces and urine-soaked bed with a sore diaper and infected bed sores. He was skin and bones, and his teeth were black and appeared to be rotting out. An autopsy determined that Stephen's cause of death was from sepsis, pneumonia, as well as several other conditions affecting his health of his heart, muscles and bone tissue. Jacob and Jocelyn are held at the Polk County Jail without bond. 2 Florida correction officers were arrested on Tuesday the 21st of February for allegedly throwing scalding hot water on inmates, causing severe burns. Lee County Sheriff's Office correction officers Casey Howe and Enzo Finnemore faced charges of misconduct and battery. Injuries were observed on an inmate housed in direct observation during routine checks. A deputy conducting checks notified a supervisor immediately. The investigation found 3 inmates had first and second degree burns on their chests and arms. Casey and Enzo are believed to have been using the water dispenser to throw hot water on the inmates to gain compliance. The 2 deputies have been fired. Lee County Sheriff Carmen Machino said that the Sheriff's Office does not tolerate the disgusting and cruel actions of these correction officers. Enzo's employment with the Sheriff's Office began in December of 2021, while Casey started in 2022. Casey was held on a $16,500 bond, while Enzo's was set at $6,500. 43-year-old Clemente Flores Hernandez is accused of fatally shooting his long-time living girlfriend and abducting her grandson last week. At around 8:15 p.m. on Friday the 24th of February, authorities received a report that her mother had been shot at her home in the 4700 block of Durham Court in Denver, Colorado. Police said the victim's son told authorities that Clemente shot his mother and abducted his son. He reportedly followed Clemente in his vehicle, and Adams County Sheriff's deputies were able to stop Clemente on eastbound Interstate 70 near mile marker 312 using stop sticks. Clemente exited the vehicle with his late girlfriend's grandson in his arms before he was taken into custody. While deputies detained Clemente, police responded to the home on Durham Court and found the victim suffering from a gunshot wound to the head, and she was pronounced dead at the scene. During an interview, the victim's son told police that he and his son were in the basement of the home when his mother told them to come upstairs for dinner. The son reportedly stayed in the basement as the victim's grandson went upstairs. According to police, the son heard gunshots, and when he went upstairs, he found Clemente approaching him with a gun pointed at him. The two struggled over the gun, and Clemente allegedly assaulted his girlfriend's son and pushed him against the wall. The son told police he was unable to breathe, was dizzy, and felt like he was going to lose consciousness. Eventually, the son was able to escape, and he followed Clemente and the victim's grandson in his vehicle before he was stopped by deputies. Police said that the victim's son and grandson did not suffer any serious bodily injury. Clemente faces charges of first-degree murder, first-degree attempted murder, and first-degree kidnapping. The parents of a 4-month-old baby in Michigan are behind bars for allegedly leaving him in the backseat of a car in freezing conditions. The arrest stems from an incident in Grand Haven on the 29th of January. It's alleged that the couple, 32-year-old Philip Nass and 30-year-old Crystal Canals, were in a car that had pulled over on the side of a street and then passed out in the front seat. The car was off, and the baby was in the back seat unsecured in an infant carrier without winter clothing, socks or a blanket. A passerby noticed the car and the occupants and called 911. By the time first responders arrived, the baby's condition had deteriorated. His feet were blue, and his skin was cold to touch. Medics rushed the baby to the Trinity Health Grand Haven for treatment, and he has since recovered. Authorities said that it suspected that drug use contributed to this incident. On the evening of the 22nd of February, detectives secured warrants for the parents' arrest. Officers spotted the couple driving along Beechtree Street that night and were arrested. They each charged with felony abuse of a child, and Philip was additionally charged with 1 count of habitual offender. They both held at the Ottawa County Jail on a $50,000 bond. Authorities said that if the person hadn't called 911, the baby very likely would have died if he remained in the car. Philip has a criminal history, including past convictions for domestic violence, identity theft, home invasion, resisting assaulting, obstructing a police officer, and controlled substance delivery. 30-year-old Alexander Paul Wardell has been arrested for allegedly killing his girlfriend and a dog. At 4:42 p.m. on the 18th of February, Fire Department services responded to a blaze at Cube Smart Self-Storage at 4640 South 900 East in Murray, Utah. After extinguishing the fire, officials located a deceased woman and a dog inside the storage unit where the fire broke out. Authorities identified the woman as 27-year-old Morgan K. Harris and a pet dog Huck. Alexander was identified as a suspect, and he was taken into custody. While questioned by detectives, Alexander allegedly admitted to locking Morgan and Huck in the storage unit before walking away. After he left the area, the storage unit caught fire, and the door remained closed until firefighters were able to pry it open. He is charged with kidnapping, negligent homicide, violation of parole, 2 counts of aggravated assault, possession of a dangerous weapon, and 2 counts of criminal mischief. He is held at the Salt Lake County Jail without bond. Alexander has an extensive criminal history, and was released on bond a day before the killings. He violated probation on the 16th of February and got out of jail the next day after paying a $5,000 bond. The violation stems from an original charge in December of 2018, when Alexander was found guilty of beating his former girlfriend with a golf club and threatening her with a knife. He spent 220 days in jail before pleading guilty in exchange for a 36-month probation sentence. He's violated probation multiple times with drug and weapon offences, and he spent time in a rehabilitation centre. In August, his probation officer recommended the courts revoke his probation and order his original prison sentence of 5 years. This recommendation was not followed. In a tribute to Morgan, her family said she's always been known for a sweet, shy and kind temperament, being a deep thinker with amazing artistic abilities and always having an infectious giggle. She worked as a model, makeup artist and medical assistant, and had just started a job in Draper. A 28-year-old woman allegedly cut off her 28-year-old boyfriend's penis after he threatened to leak their sex tapes because she refused to sleep with him. The names of the victim and the suspect have not been released. The man was rushed to a hospital after the attack at a hotel in Sibolga, North Sumatra, Indonesia. He is now in intensive care. Police allege that on Saturday the 25th of February, the woman severed his penis after he came onto her, and she was not in the mood. The couple had been in a relationship for about 7 months. They made an appointment to meet at a hotel, and the man asked to have sex, after which the woman refused. When he was denied sex, the man threatened to spread the videos of their intimate activities. Then while he was ready to take a shower, the suspect carried out the attack. She took a knife that belonged to the man and cut off his penis. A receptionist at the hotel said the woman approached him and asked for medical assistance after her boyfriend was bleeding profusely at the scene. The woman's been arrested and is held at the Sibolga police station, but has not been charged. Police said they're waiting to interview the boyfriend. 50-year-old Belinda Miller of Augusta, Georgia is behind bars and is accused of deliberately driving a vehicle into a Popeyes restaurant after biscuits were mistakenly left out of her order. At 7:45 p.m. on Saturday the 18th of February, deputies from the Richmond County Sheriff's Office responded to Popeyes at 450 Walton Way after receiving reports of an accident with potential injuries. The store manager told police that Belinda became upset when she discovered no biscuits were in her order, and that she then drove a 2011 black Toyota RAV4 into the restaurant's east entrance. The manager said that prior to the crash, the restaurant corrected the mistake and gave her the biscuits, but she still was not satisfied. The manager said that the woman threatened staff before the incident, including calling the store and threatening to drive a car into the building. One witness told deputies that she was waiting in line when Belinda told her she better hurry up and get her order because she was coming back in there. Linda almost struck an 18-year-old employee with a vehicle when she crashed through the doors and walls into the store. She continued driving several feet into the store until her vehicle was stopped by debris. After crashing into the restaurant, Linda fled the scene and headed south on Gordon Highway. Her SUV was later found at her home with front-end damage. On Wednesday the 22nd of February, Belinda was arrested and charged with first-degree criminal damage to property and aggravated assault. She's held at the Charles B. Webster Detention Centre on a $4,600 bond, as well as a probation hold. This isn't the first time Belinda has rammed a vehicle into a building. In May of 2020, Belinda claimed that she was upset and drunk, and twice rammed a vehicle into the side of a residential building. She drove a RAV4 into the side of an apartment building at Forest Brook Apartments on Damascus Road. The man she was arguing with tried to calm her down after she hit the building the first time. She then backed up and struck the building a second time. In 2018, Belinda pulled the wheel as a man was driving, causing him to veer off the road and into a wooded area. She was also charged with punching him as he drove. She got probation in both cases. A 17-year-old student with special needs faces charges for allegedly attacking a teacher's aide after she confiscated a portable electronic gaming device from him. The incident occurred at around 10 a.m. on Tuesday the 21st of February at Matanzas High School in Palm Beach, Florida. The student became upset and rushed at the teacher's aide, identified as 57-year-old Joe Nadich, after she took his Nintendo Switch game away from him during class. She turned around and caught a glimpse of him from behind before he shoved her, causing her to go airborne for 5 to 6 feet before hitting her head on the ground and losing consciousness. Flagler County Sheriff Rick Staley said, "This could have been a homicide. When you push people like that and they hit their head, you never know the outcome." The student, who's 6'7" and weighs 270 pounds, continued to attack Joan. He repeatedly stomped, kicked and punched the unconscious woman in the back and head while she was on the ground. He then spat on her and threatened to kill her. Other students and staff were able to intervene and restrain the student before deputies arrived. Joan was taken to a local hospital and released, and is believed to have broken ribs and significant bruising. Rick said, "I believe she'll be out of work for at least several weeks, if she ever plans on returning." The student, whose name has not been disclosed because of his age, was charged with felony aggravated battery with bodily harm and was eventually turned over to the Department of Juvenile Justice. He also faces possible school discipline and expulsion. The student asked if he was going to jail while deputies handcuffed him inside the school. When he was told yes, he swore at them and said he didn't want to go to jail, adding that he had more important things to do, before accusing them of manhandling him. 28-year-old Trent Krieger has been found guilty of killing his 67-year-old grandfather, Robert Earl Huffman Jr., during a fight in Daleville, Indiana in 2021. On Friday, the 17th of February, a jury convicted Trent of murder and aggravated battery. The incident occurred in the early morning hours of the 5th of September 2021 in the 9100 block of South Walnut Street. Trent had reportedly been staying in the parked car outside his grandfather's home and drank almost 2 pints of vodka over a 7-hour period. Robert became upset about the amount of alcohol Trent was consuming, so he grabbed the keys from him and tried to pull his grandson out of the car when the two began fighting. Trent then struck his grandfather with a steel wheelbarrow, choked him and kicked him. He then nudged a concrete cinder block over Robert's head before he stomped down on it multiple times. At 2:40 a.m, Trent called 911 and said, "My grandpa's outside and I don't feel a pulse. Him and I got into a fight and he lost." A dispatcher then directed Trent how to perform CPR until medics arrived. Robert was pronounced dead at the scene. A forensic pathologist said that Robert sustained 25 fractures to his ribs as a result of the brawl. He was face down on the ground after suffering the injuries and likely suffocated to death. Prosecutors said that Trent stomped on his grandfather's head to finish him off. A friend of Robert, Ed Johnson, testified that Robert was somewhat limited in mobility after having his knees replaced and suffered from diabetes among other ailments. He recalled his friend had limited stamina when they worked together on projects. He once recalled Trent bristled when his grandfather asked for help with a chore. "That's all you live for, to boss me around," Trent reportedly told Robert. Trent is scheduled to be sentenced on the 24th of March and faces between 45 to 65 years for the murder conviction and 3 to 16 years for the aggravated battery conviction. 63-year-old John Ewing of Topeka, Kansas has been found guilty of murdering his ex-girlfriend with an axe in April of 2021. On Friday the 17th of February, John was convicted of murder, aggravated kidnapping, aggravated burglary, criminal threat, and interference with law enforcement for the death of 58-year-old Deborah Stevens. The incident occurred on the morning of the 27th of April 2021 at the Coachlight South Mobile Home Park at 801 Southwest 57th Street. Surveillance video captured John sneaking up on Deborah and approaching her from the back as she leaned into her car. John grabbed her head and neck and forced her to the ground, where he hit her several times with a large flashlight. As Deborah yelled out for help, he moved her into the trailer where he told her, "I will kill you." After pushing her into the trailer, he grabbed an axe and repeatedly struck her in the head. After killing Deborah, John left the mobile home park before returning hours later and contacting authorities about the death. At around 5:30 p.m. that day, deputies from the Shawnee County Sheriff's Office arrived at the trailer. When deputies entered, they found John smoking a cigarette on Deborah's bed, with her lifeless body laying face up next to him. John said he got into an argument with Deborah after she hit him, after she thought he slashed her tires, but he said he only let the air out. John will be sentenced on the 12th of May. A 28-year-old brothel worker was arrested after a dispute between two co-workers escalated into a shooting and an armed standoff with law enforcement officials at the Moonlight Bunny Ranch in Carson City, Nevada. At 9:37 p.m. on Monday the 20th of February, deputies received a report of the dispute, and the 911 caller said they heard gunshots. Upon arrival of deputies, they heard several more gunshots, and they evacuated the brothel. During their investigation, the Lyon County Sheriff's Office learned that Bunny Ranch employee Savannah Henderson, also known as Tiara Tay, was responsible for firing the gun and then retreated into a room inside the business. The Crisis Negotiations Team, Special Weapons and Tactics, and Technology Team reportedly responded to the scene, and a standoff ensued. At around 12:33 a.m., the Sheriff's Office said Savannah was taken into custody without further incident. Savannah is charged with 2 counts of possession of a firearm by a convicted felon, possession of a controlled substance, discharging a firearm where others may be endangered, and obstructing resisting a peace officer. She was held at the Lyon County Jail, but was released after paying $86,140 in bail.